Hey everyone! So, have you ever noticed this totally wild paradox? We see people who spend a decade, maybe even more, mastering genuinely difficult, complex fields. We're talking brilliant doctors, lawyers, engineers, and somehow they still manage to go completely broke. It literally happens every single year. You know the type. They've got the doctor's white coat on the hook, a pristine luxury car on the driveway, and a stack of unopened, terrifying bills sitting right there on the kitchen counter. It's crazy, right? But it's true. Some of the absolute worst financial decisions in America are made by some of the highest earners.
Now, really quick, before we start tearing into these hidden forces, just a brief disclaimer. This is specifically a behavioral look at wealth and human psychology. It is not individualized financial advice. So please always consult a licensed advisor for your own personalized financial planning. Okay, let's get into it.
So, what's the deal here? Let's dive right into this central mystery. Why do these high earners, people who so clearly know how to study, calculate, and execute incredibly complex plans, consistently make some of the worst financial decisions out there? I mean, it feels like a massive gap in logic, doesn't it? If they're so smart, why are their bank accounts sometimes so incredibly fragile?
Well, to answer that, we've got to reveal the first major paradigm shift of this entire topic. Listen to this. Money is not a math problem. It is a behavior problem wearing a math costume. Financial struggles aren't about a lack of intelligence. They really aren't about an inability to do middle school level addition and subtraction. No, they are entirely about hidden, deeply ingrained psychological forces that trip up literally everyone, totally regardless of their IQ. Once you start seeing wealth this way, traditional financial advice starts to look completely different.
All right, moving right along to Section 1, the high income illusion.
This brings us to our first hidden enemy, which is this incredibly common, completely false assumption that a massive paycheck automatically guarantees financial security. Picture this. On one side, you have a high earner whose expenses rise exactly as fast as their income. On the other side, you have an average earner with a grounded, strictly defined budget. Financially speaking, these two people are in nearly the exact same position. The only difference? The high earner just has way better looking debt. Sure, they have a glossier car and a zip code with a lot more prestige, but their actual financial stability is virtually identical to the person making a fraction of what they do.
And the way this happens is through a little mechanism called lifestyle creep. Basically, every single pay raise you get quietly gets absorbed by a slightly nicer car, maybe a slightly bigger house, or just nicer dinners out. Your expenses literally expand to perfectly fill whatever new income arrives. It completely proves that wealth is a behavioral variable. It's entirely about the gap between what comes in and what goes out. It's not an income variable at all.
Next up, Section 2, the loss aversion bias.
So how exactly does deep-rooted emotion completely overrule logic, even for genuinely smart, mathematically gifted investors? Well, it happens through loss aversion, which is the exact psychological mechanism behind panic selling during a market downturn. Even people who totally understand the math of investing will let emotion override their careful plans at exactly the worst possible moment. Why? Because the psychological pain of losing money hits us so much harder than the joy of making it.
And get this, the imbalance isn't a small one either. The research actually shows that losing money hurts exactly twice as much as gaining it feels good. 2 times. Imagine a scale where the pain of losing $1,000 weighs roughly double the pleasure of gaining that exact same $1,000. That incredibly heavy emotional weight, it completely crushes logical thought.
It's a brutal tug-of-war, right? The math clearly dictates that you should stay invested for the long run. But the emotional weight, that agonizing, gut-wrenching feeling of watching your portfolio turn red, screams at you to run. And every single market cycle, a massive share of smart investors click that sell button. The secret is that the most financially successful people in the world aren't actually better stock analysts. Not at all. They have just built systems to remove this emotional panic from the moment entirely, practically protecting themselves from their own brains.
Which leads us to Section 3, the invisible comparison trap.
You know, we almost never make our financial choices in a vacuum. As this brilliant quote highlights, your normal budget is set by who you're standing next to. Researchers have found that your spending and saving behavior shifts measurably based on what your neighbors or peers are visibly doing. Think about it. If the guy next door gets a brand new SUV, your perfectly fine sedan suddenly feels, well, a bit older. It's not because you actually need a new car. It's because a social benchmark has been quietly reset without you even noticing it happening.
And oh man, social media just throws absolute jet fuel on this. We are constantly, relentlessly bombarded by a chaotic, fast-paced stream of everyone else's absolute best financial moments. The new homes, the lavish vacations, the designer clothes. It's this endless highlight reel comparing their peaks to your ordinary, daily life. It quietly, inevitably forces your spending habits upward, totally regardless of your actual income. And here's the real kicker: absolutely none of this upward social pressure shows up on your standard budget spreadsheet. It's the invisible force that makes you quietly ignore that very spreadsheet by the end of the month.
Okay, let's just take a breath here for Section 4, the willpower myth.
Because you might be sitting there thinking, okay, lifestyle creep, loss aversion, comparison traps, I just need to be tougher, I just need more discipline. But it is really time to shatter the illusion that you just need to try harder. Discipline, when applied directly against these specific, deep-rooted psychological forces in the heat of the moment, is an exhausting and totally unreliable strategy. Expecting daily motivation to save you is a literal recipe for failure, because you're relying on sheer willpower against an environment that is actively and continuously working against you. Honestly, I hope this is a huge relief to hear. The people who consistently build wealth, they aren't waking up every single day and winning some superhuman willpower battle against lifestyle creep and social media envy. They just aren't. They have simply stopped trying to out-willpower their own brains. Instead, they rely on something so much more powerful and way less exhausting.
All right, time for the antidote. Section 5, automating your financial systems.
We've identified the biases, so let's get highly actionable and look at the research-backed solutions that bypass all of these cognitive traps. Let's walk through these 3 vital steps, because they do the heavy lifting your motivation was never, ever reliable enough to do alone. Step 1. Automate the decision completely out of existence. Step 2. Build a visible buffer against that loss aversion we talked about. And Step 3. Define your own financial normal explicitly, in writing. Let's see how these map directly to those villains we discussed earlier. So what does this look like in the real world? Here is the antidote in practice. To fight lifestyle creep, you set up automatic transfers on payday. Boom. The money goes into savings before the temptation to spend it even shows up. To fight loss aversion, top financial planners actually recommend deliberately muting your investment apps during volatile periods. Literally, just turn off the notifications. If you don't look, you don't feel the 2x pain, and you don't panic sell. And finally, to fight that comparison trap, having a written plan gives you something concrete to check a purchase against, rather than relying on an invisible, constantly shifting social benchmark. Success absolutely requires designing around human nature, not fighting it.
Bringing it all home with Section 6, the real takeaway.
I really want you to walk away with this empowering realization. If you have made financial mistakes in the past despite genuinely knowing better, that was never proof that you're bad with money. It really wasn't. It is simply proof that you have a normal human brain operating exactly as predicted inside a system that constantly nudges it in the wrong direction. The people who look effortlessly good with money aren't inherently smarter than you. They've just stopped relying on willpower to fight biases that they were never going to beat fairly in the first place.
Before we go, I want to leave you with a question to really think about, and I'd absolutely love for you to share your thoughts down in the comments. What is one financial decision you made that you know, looking back, was purely emotional and not logical? Think about it, totally let go of the guilt, and start building those automated systems today. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll catch you next time.